Shalom. If this is your first video watching of ours, my name is Cody and this is my wife, Sarah. We've been married for almost 10 years in November, and this is going to be a relationship Q&A. This is our first Q&A we've ever done on this channel, actually. We just recently hit 10,000 subscribers. We're now over 11,000. Thank you guys for subscribing and watching our videos. So we thought maybe we'd try out a Q&A and be specifically about relationships. And you guys asked a lot of questions on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and this new YouTube community tab thing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna dive into the questions, and we'll start with a really deep one, a tough one.
Oh, okay.
And Marisa asked, who farts more, Cody or Sarah? Be honest. And obviously, Sarah.
No.
Yes.
No. It is very obviously Cody.
Sarah.
Honestly. She said answer honestly.
Yeah.
No.
I keep a tally in my notebook. It's neck to neck. But definitely
no,
Sarah.
It's not. Do you want to tell a real true story? Whenever we very first got married, he would legitimately do this. He would fart in bed and then shove my face under the blankets.
It's a Dutch oven. It's normal.
Don't ever do that.
We've been married for 10 years, so can't say it didn't work.
It did not work. Okay, so the next question, a lot of you asked something very similar. Basically, are you gonna have kids, and if and when you do have kids, will you raise them in New York or will you move back home? I feel like, I can't never say never, right? Mm-hmm. But honestly, not really looking to have children at this point. We kind of, when we got married, always said like, oh, we'll have kids in 5 years, but it's been 10.
Yeah.
So
it was like, in 5 years we'll have kids, and then 5 years came around and we were like, probably like 5 more years. And then it's now been 9, and I feel like we are farther away from having kids now than when we first got married.
Yeah. Honestly, I've never felt like the desire to have kids. It was always just something that you do, so I just said it, but I've never really like felt the need to have kids. So I don't know, I'm kind of fine. However, if we did happen to have children, I don't know that I'd raise them it's hard to have kids in New York, I think. There's a really great side to it that they are so cultured and like exposed to a lot of different things and people, which is awesome. But New York City is a really difficult place to live, and then like add kids on top of that, I don't know, but I definitely wouldn't move back home to do it. I would go somewhere else. Whatever.
So the next question is the top liked question on YouTube, and it comes from Kelsey Jensen. No relation that I'm aware of. Might be a long lost cousin, or maybe you are my cousin and I don't remember you. Sorry. But she asks, living in such a tight space, do you ever want to strangle one another? What do you do when you want to have your own space?
Well, first of all, we live in 300 square feet in New York City. Back in Oklahoma, we lived in a 4-bedroom house, and it hasn't made a bit of difference, I feel like, in how we...
Yeah. Like,
I think no matter what, when you live with a person, at one point or another, you're gonna want to strangle them. Like, it's just human nature to, like...
Be selfish.
Yeah. And the small space hasn't made a difference in that. Like, I feel no less and no more like I need to strangle you.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same for everybody, but in our last home was like 4 bedrooms, and you could go into wherever space you wanted to be like away from each other, but being in the same house felt the same. Like, you're still there.
Yeah. Like, I would still, even in a 4-bedroom home, I would still leave to get away. I wouldn't like, I had my own room, but I hardly ever used it because there was still another person in the house, and so I don't know. What I like to do for like having my own time and my own space is like actually schedule it and leave and go off somewhere by myself. Like I never make Cody leave the apartment or the house. It's always me who's leaving, because I don't know, there's something about it like where you're going off on your own and like enjoying something on your own, that's really refreshing.
So what we do is pretty much every single Friday morning, Sarah goes off by herself for like, whether that's 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever. And so I just, do whatever I want to do. And obviously that's alone time for me, but I really don't care. Like it doesn't like affect my mood in any way. Like as far as like being alone or being with people or being with Sarah, like even if we just had a fight, it doesn't bother me to sit right next to her.
It's the worst. Yeah, that's what I would suggest, like just scheduling your own time. Not just like for your own personal health, but I think for the health of both of you, because I experienced something that then I want to go home and like tell him about, like some crazy person I saw on the street or whatever. I don't know. That's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the saying is distance makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
And we've honestly never been able to put that into practice because we have never spent more than like a weekend apart from each other until last month whenever I went to Africa for 2 weeks. And the 2 weeks, that was the longest we had ever been apart since we were like 15.
Maybe, yeah. Too long, guys.
And we're 28, 29 now, so a long time.
Yeah.
And it's never really been a problem, but when we did come back, I did notice a difference in Sarah, like wanting to be with me more versus me. I don't think it affected me wanting to be with her more or less. It like, I don't know, maybe I'm just weird, but
yeah.
I mean, I definitely missed her and wanted to be with her and like wanted to see her and spend time with her and stuff like that. But as far as like this renewed, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like I get to be married to you. Like it's always been that way.
Yeah. Whereas I definitely appreciate something. I don't know. You know what you have when you don't have it, right? Like.
Yeah. Sarah takes me for granted. What she's trying to say.
No. I really appreciate my alone time. That's all.
Yeah. Another question that multiple people asked in different ways is how has social media or vlogging affected our relationship, or if Sarah sometimes doesn't want to be in the vlogs or things like that. And I would say it has affected our relationship for the positive, I think.
Vlogging specifically.
Yes, because of just the act of doing something creative together, I think is huge, but then also because there are days whenever maybe we're irritated with each other, just like in a funk or whatever, and getting out and having to vlog because we've committed to doing 3 videos a week.
Yeah.
It just like forces you to fake it until you make it. And so like the act of getting a smile on your face helps.
The more you smile, the happier you actually become, even if it's fake in the beginning.
Right.
Makes you happy.
Right.
Which is really good for me. I love doing these kinds of things, like going out and seeing and adventuring, but it's hard for me in the moment of like being on my couch to do it. So it's nice to have something that like forces me to do it.
Yeah, and I have really noticed like if Sarah is in a funk and then we go out and vlog, when we come back, when we're done, when we shut the camera off, she's like much happier and I'm much happier. Yeah, and I'm much happier because she's more of a joy to be around.
Thanks.
Okay, so the next question is definitely a deeper question that is hard to answer succinctly to fit in this video.
Yeah.
And we also have a ton of questions that I want to get through. And speaking of that, we have enough questions that we could do like a podcast of all this type of stuff. If that's something that you're interested in, just let us know.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna try to answer this in. Yeah. What do you feel like are the pros and cons of marriage compared to being in a long-term relationship without being married? And so that's a tough question because I think that you can come at that through lots of different worldviews, but I'm gonna answer it through ours specifically, and that is through being Christians. And so I personally feel like there is a huge difference between being married and then just living together or being in a long-term relationship with somebody that you're not married to, because I feel like there is a spiritual and mental shift whenever you actually get married and form that covenant with each other. And you just, it's so nuanced, I think. It's hard for me to explain.
Yeah, I feel like almost it doesn't really matter what your world or religious views are. Obviously, like, that's what we believe, like, but I think that even people who, you know, don't believe what we believe experience it. They've lived together for several years, and then they get married, and all they can say is, like, I can't explain it. There's just like a difference in the relationship, like a renewed commitment. I feel like it's a little more precious in some form. It's hard to like describe if you haven't felt it, but like being married versus just like being committed, I think that you can have a really beautiful, great, committed relationship. But when you get married, there's a shift, and I don't know what it is, but it's just different.
I think that part of it is the fact that there's no longer a piece of your mind that's like they can leave at any time.
Right.
And not that you can't when you're married, because obviously there's divorce and 50% of marriages end in divorce, so there is that option.
Yeah.
But I feel like because you actually enter into a covenant binding relationship of I'm committed to you till death do us part, and that's what you are putting out there as a promise.
Right.
Like there's this part of your brain that can kind of let go and not have to like perform for that person anymore and say like, if I don't do these things, then they're going to leave me because they can.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that's part of it, maybe it's not. I feel like there's such...
It's so nuanced.
Yeah, I just feel like there is something so special about marriage that is really hard to explain.
Yeah.
I know that's like very surface and maybe doesn't even answer the question, but that would take a really long conversation unpacking all of that.
Yeah.
So that's where we're gonna...
I don't feel like I'm qualified enough in marriage to even...
So we're gonna leave it at that, but there's tons more to talk about.
The next question is from Anna, and she says, do you have your own terms or nicknames for things you do day to day? Just like developed our own language, I guess, kind of thing.
Yes.
The answer, short, would be no.
Oh, no. I mean, certs is what I call desserts. Tray is what I call entrees.
Chicky parm.
I call sandwiches Sammy's. Sam Doodles or Adam Sandler's.
I call noodles long-ass rice.
Question from Lisa. You both lead such interesting lives, both individually and as a couple. Have you ever considered writing a book?
Together? No. That's interesting. Also, I feel like we don't lead interesting lives. Like, I understand people saying that, but I'm just very normal. I like to just chill. You know?
That was actually supposed to just segue into Sarah saying, yes, I would love to write a book because that is my dream.
I suck at self-marketing, you guys.
From Milo, what are some things that are really important to remember when you first start dating somebody? I've been dating this girl for 3 months now, and I really want it to last. Well, first thing I'll say is I haven't first started dating somebody in like 13, 14 years.
A long time.
But I think the principles are probably the same no matter what.
Yeah.
And that is think of yourself less, think of the other person more.
Respect.
Yeah, respect, empathy.
Empathy.
And also, for you personally, the thing that she's going to be the most attracted to is going to be confidence without being a douchebag. So
confidence and vulnerable at the same time.
Yes.
I think the main things to remember is like remember that they're a person, and remember to love well through the good and the bad, and that can look a myriad of different ways, I feel like. And just be kind and be respectful. And next question is from Ariana. Shout out, Ariana. How do you keep your relationship fun and new after being together so long? Which is a really great question because I have no idea. I mean, the thing is that for me personally, I don't try to like put on any fronts of any kind with anybody. So I don't do things that I don't like just because you want to do them, and vice versa. Like, I don't force you to do something that you don't like. Like, I feel like just finding like common interests. I think one of the main things is that we both fell in love with traveling, and like experiencing things.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we prioritize experiences, and that helps.
Yeah. Also, I think like making a conscious effort to take up interests and hobbies that the other person is into. You're not gonna be into everything the other person's into, but
Right.
I think that like that shows something to the other person, and it gives you something more and exciting to talk about. Like a prime example is like Sarah really loves reading, and when we first got married, I was like Kanye, and I was a proud non-reader of books. But it was such a core part of who she is that to give us like something to talk about and something to like go and enjoy together, I just started reading, and now I really enjoy reading. I don't read nearly as much as Sarah does, but it still gives us that common interest that we can have together.
Yeah, I think finding things that you enjoy, that you both can like enjoy without compromising each other, is important.
Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
I don't either.
There's that. Next one is just a fun one from Rosie, who says, who's the neat one and who's the messy one? Be honest.
I'm the messy one.
100%.
That's very easy to answer.
Question from Rachel. She says, how do you maintain good communication with one another, and how do you continuously put faith first?
I don't know if your opinion on communication is the same, but I feel like we don't communicate very well, or like that's the thing that we continuously have to like work on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing with almost every single relationship ever, even friendships, is communication, and you have to constantly work on communicating with each other, because there's so much stuff you say in your head that you don't actually say out loud. And in every relationship I've ever been in contact with, you know, wise counsel above me and seeing new relationships, all that type of stuff, communication is always a pressure point in every relationship. And I think that's something that you actively have to be working on, and it's also like one of those ebb and flow things that like sometimes you're really good at it, sometimes you're really bad at it. But I think one thing that we do to actively like maintain communication and stuff like that is to get out of the house and go to like Starbucks or wherever and sit across from each other and just like talk. Not anything specifically like about how was your day, just like having a conversation.
Like making plans. We don't really do that.
And so I think that has been one thing that has really helped us. And that's the reason we started the Deeply Curious podcast, is because those types of conversations is what we would typically have sitting across from each other over coffee. And I know that whenever we actively do that, like I leave those times feeling more refreshed. I feel closer to Sarah, because the reason I fell in love with Sarah is not to just like sit on the couch. It was because I love Sarah's brain, not just like everything else, you know? It's so being able to have an active conversation is like fills that, you know, tank or whatever.
Yeah.
So the next part of the question is how do we continuously put faith first? And to like as succinctly as possible answer this is, I believe that we all have this like God-shaped hole in us as people, as humans, and it's so easy for us because of our human nature to try to put our spouse in that hole, and that will only sustain you for so long. But humans are not perfect, and they don't perfectly fit that God-shaped hole, and so you start to resent, you start to just all the negative emotions because they're not actually fulfilling who you are, because the only person I believe that can really fulfill who you are is God and Jesus. And so I think that ultimately that is the answer, is that you have to actively seek to fill that void in you with Jesus and something bigger than yourself and not your spouse.
I think as far as like me keeping faith first, it's a lot more difficult. I tend to have a propensity to, I'm very spiritual, but I like attribute things to like the universe and whatever. I'm just not quite as sure of anything, even like myself or literally anything, as Cody is. So I have a more difficult time like keeping faith first, I guess.
So this is going to be the last question. We got like 40 questions, and I thought we could make our way through a ton of them. I was very over ambitious with that, because obviously this video is already kind of long. Yeah. So can't answer all of them. Sorry, I was really thinking we could, because the answers in my head were a lot shorter than whenever I actually tried to speak them. So this will be the last question.
Okay, it's from Diana, and she says, what are the pros and cons for being married at such a young age?
I think the pro and the con are actually the same thing, and that is the fact that whenever you are young, like especially when we got married, we were 18 and 19, that you grow and you change so much through that time that if things go right, if things go well, you end up growing together and you become adults together. You have such a rich history and experience together that it's like you became adults together, and I think there's something so special about that you don't come together after you've already had all these experiences, and now you have to mold two people together that have such different like life experiences, viewpoints, and all that type of stuff. Not that there's not beauty in that, but I think that an advantage is that you became these people together.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of risk in that, because I am not who I was when I was 18.
And I'm not who I was when I was 19.
Yeah. So I think that we got really lucky that we grew together, and mostly that's because of the people who were around us.
And I think also keeping faith at the forefront and try to keep it first.
Yeah, but I would say like there were a lot of times in my early 20s that I was like, what did I do? You know, like, I mean, we were just on such opposite pages so often because we were just changing so much. But I think like keeping the community around us was like key in us staying together.
Right.
And now, and it's paid off. Like, I think now we're like in a really great spot, and it is nice to have somebody who like literally knows me from when I was a child, you know?
I think that also, like, that risk is also, like, I think the biggest con is that there's getting married at such a young age, there's always that chance that you could grow into completely different people. You could grow separately from each other.
By no fault of anyone's, really. It just happens.
I just think that we were just so fortunate and so lucky that we grew on the same path and into the people that we are today.
Yeah.
And that now Sarah and I've had this conversation a lot, that if something was to happen to one of us at this point in our lives, I don't feel like there's anybody that we could develop this type of a relationship with in the future, because we would be entering into that relationship as adults and not have gone through so much life experience at such a young age together.
Yeah. I tend to disagree a little bit with you on that, but
she just doesn't want to admit that she could have as rich of a life without me.
Okay.
And that comes with, I mean, that's because I personally do believe I could not have as of a rich of a life and relationship without Sarah.
You probably couldn't.
And I'm now beginning to realize that we probably should have made this a podcast, or maybe we should just go ahead and do a podcast at some point, because we've been recording this clip right here for 12 minutes, which I know almost all of it has been cut out in the edit. So because of that, I'm just going to end it here. That way we respect your guys' time. Thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you're not. We have videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on this channel. We also do a podcast, like I mentioned, called Deeply Curious. You can find that on any podcasting app. Just search Deeply Curious. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this helped. Let us know if you liked it by hitting the like button, leaving us a comment. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.